Hello, welcome back to my channel. My name is Lana and welcome back to TBR Finds. So last time I did a TBR Finds was in early December, talking about the books I've added to my TBR in November, and since then I've accumulated quite a few books on my TBR. We're talking December, January and February. Altogether it is 32 books that I've added to my want to read on Goodreads. The thing that I want to do today is tell you about all of them, but very short. I'm not going to go too much into it. I never really do because these are books I want to buy, so I don't actually know much about them, but I'm gonna be like even quicker today because again, some of these I've added in December. I mean, let's be honest, most of these I don't even remember, but I still want to tell you about them in case there's a title here that will like really spark your interest and will make you want to pick it up. Because there are so many books, I've decided to make it easier for you and group these books into genres and put them all in a timestamp, so you don't, if you're not interested in nonfiction, skip it. Or if you're only here for, you know, mystery books, great, I've got a lot of those. I've only one book in the genre of like general fiction, and that is The Storied Life of A.J. Thackeray. From what I understand, we're following a man who owns a bookstore and like he's down on his luck. He kind of fell out of love with books and reading, and this is the story of him finding that joy and love again. It has great reviews. There's Rana who gave it 4 stars, Aoife who gave it 4.5 stars. I trust them, and it sounds like a very nice book, you know, a book about books. We love those. Then I have 2 graphic novels, and the first one is Ballad for Sophie, that was in Ariel's best books of 2022, I'm pretty sure. I remember nothing about this. This is a Portuguese graphic novel about music, about a pianist. Somewhere between reality and fantasy, Julian composes, like in a musical score, a complex and moving story about the cost of success, rivalry, redemption and flying pianos. This is not really saying much, but I do remember that the way Ariel spoke about this book really made me pick it up, and it's about music and I love music so it's on the list. And the other graphic novel I have here is an Italian one that's called La Giusta Misura. How was it translated? Just Enough. And from what I understand, it's about 2 people who are about to turn 30 and they're kind of unhappy in their lives, and I think they're either starting a relationship or they are in a relationship and they're trying to make it better. Like it's like a slice of life type of story from, I think that's what it is. I've heard great reviews and I'm trying to read more Italian books, so I was excited to add this one in. Here I have 2 books on acting. The Actor's Guide to Creating Character. William Esper teaches the Meisner technique. I love Meisner, so it's definitely one to get to it. And the other one is one that came out last year, and I saw it because it just came out and I was interested to see what new information and like how is this book different from other books on the topic. And it's The Method: How the 20th Century Learned to Act. And obviously it's about acting technique and history, and that's something I'm interested in, yeah, those are 2 books on acting. Then I have The Musician's Mind: Teaching, Learning and Performance in the Age of Brain Science. If you've been here before, you know I love anatomy, I love brain, I love science, and I'm a musician. So these things combined make me very happy. Also, this book is fairly recent. It was published in 2020, and the last, I would say, like 5 to 7 years, there have been a lot of new discoveries, new research done on our brains and neuroscience and seeing how we process information. So again, adding the music part onto this. is very exciting to me. Next is a book called The Dawn of Language: Access, Lies, Midwifery, and How We Came to Talk. This is by a Swedish author, and it's drawing on evidence from many fields, including archaeology, anthropology, neurology, and linguistics. A fascinating survey of how grammar came into being and the differences of similarities between languages spoken around the world, and exploring how language eventually emerged in the very remote human past. Love languages, love history, yes. Next is a book I saw on Instagram. I think it was Amy who posted this. It's Cursed Objects, Strange but True Stories of the World's Most Infamous Items. It says, whether you believe in curses or not, the often tragic and always bizarre stories behind these objects will fascinate you. I love it. Everything about this concept appeals to me so much. Next is All the Knowledge in the World: The Extraordinary History of the Encyclopedia. I think the title says it all. Books like these really interest me, but I find them hard to actually pick up and read. But if I find the audiobook for this book, I would definitely listen to this. I like the idea of history of encyclopedia, because if you think about it, someone had to decide what would go in the encyclopedia and what kind of explanation of things would be there. And obviously whoever wrote that, there would be, you know, their biases would show definitely, and people couldn't just Google stuff and see different opinions and options. They had to rely on what the encyclopedia told them. And like, I think that's just fascinating to explore how that happened, also how they were sold, and like the whole business model behind them. At least that's what I think this book is about. Next is A Place for Everything: The Curious History of Alphabetical Order. Again, a book I saw in the bookstore. The cover for the Russian edition is so gorgeous, and that really caught my eye. And I think the title is self-explanatory. You know, why is it A, B, C, D? Who decided on that order of things, and how it evolved. I'm guessing it evolved in history. Again, languages and history, common themes that I'm very drawn to. Next is The Riddle of the Labyrinth: The Quest to Crack an Ancient Code. This came highly recommended on Audrey's channel. Audrey approved. If you're into nonfiction about history, I like highly recommend her channel. It's so interesting, and she has such I don't know, unique books on there. Anyway, The Riddle of the Labyrinth is another story that combines history and language. So actually for this one, I'm going to read you a little bit of the synopsis, because I cannot do this on my own. This is a riveting real-life intellectual detective story that travels from the Bronze Age Aegean, the era of Odysseus, Agamemnon, and Helen, to the turn of 20th century and the work of charismatic English archaeologist Arthur Evans, to the colorful personal stories of the decipherers. It sounds like a movie that I would really want to watch, or like a podcast I would listen to. It sounds fascinating. And another book that I found on Audrey's channel, The Dark Queens: The Bloody Rivalry That Forged the Medieval World, to trailblazing women in the early Middle Ages who wielded immense power only to be vilified for daring to rule. I don't know enough of this to be able to tell you anymore, but again, the way Audrey talked about it made me very excited to read it. It sounds fascinating. It's on the list. Okay, so the next two genres I called fantasy and then separately mystery, which also has thriller and horror, but some of this fantasy also has horror elements. So it's kind of, I'm gonna call this part fantasy and let you decide if it's right or not. First one here is Mr. Penumbra's 24-hour bookstore. This tells me it's books about books, it's contemporary, has high rating. What I can tell you is that I read the synopsis for this book, I would say like 6 times, and every time I come across this book, I have no memory of it at all. And I think this is a sign that I should go into it not really knowing anything, but I think it has to do with the bookstore. It does say global conspiracy, complex code breaking, which I love, high tech, data visualization, young love, the secret to eternal life. Whatever that means. Next I have Adagin in Cairo, which is the prequel to the series that starts with The Master of Jinn. It's been so long since I've heard anyone pitch it. I think it was Jean from Jean's Thoughts who talked about the series recently, and she talked about this prequel and how she would recommend to start with the prequel. So it's here, it's 43 pages. One day I will get to it and finally start Master of Jin. And then I have, oh, this one is exciting. It's called The Justice of Kings by Richard Swan. The reason this book really got me excited is because this is a world, like a high fantasy, epic fantasy world, and this book is a murder mystery within that world, and I just love this. I love a murder mystery, but I don't think I've ever tried reading a murder mystery set in a fantasy world that is like high fantasy murder mystery. So if I have, I can't think of it now. So this one excites me a lot. Then I have a book that I'm not sure is translated into English. It's called Mara y Marok. So I would translate it as Mara and Morok. And this is like a young adult romance fantasy, not a genre that I'm usually drawn to, but this is a very popular book. It's in all bookstores. It has like a sequel or a prequel. There are more books coming out. The few Russian booktubers that I do watch, they have talked about this and people seem to really love it. So really I want to read this book because I'm very curious, and I've not read a lot of contemporary Russian authors. There are actually a lot of Russian authors who are writing YA and are getting very popular, and I keep really wanting to try these books so I know what this, not this genre, but what they're writing about. What are these books like? But YA is just not something I'm super interested in. So like I really want to know, but I don't actually want to go through the process of reading these books. But because this one is so popular, I think I might give it a try. And next is Heart Hunt and Havoc. Fantasy, horror, paranormal, novella. It's pretty short. When a lonely transgender exorcist, Colin Hart, finds himself challenged by an unruly haunted house in Gideon, Colorado, he's kept awake by ghosts, demons, ghouls, and the handsome non-binary owner of the house, Bishop Martinez. And apparently there's a mystery with the owner of the house, and Colin has his own past that he's keeping secret. I mean, it sounds kind of messy but exciting, and even though I'm absolutely terrified by all the the jaws on the cover, the cover I think it's beautiful, and I'm trying to find my way in horror and slowly get into it more. And finally we arrived at the mystery thriller genre, the biggest one of all of this. Let's start somewhere safe with like a more classic mystery books. The first one I have, The Three Dahlias by Katie Watson. I saw this on Meg with Books channel. She has not read it, but she hauled it and the cover is beautiful, so I looked it up. I think the premise is very interesting. So it talks about three rival actresses who all portrayed this famous detective, Dahlia Lively. One of them I think was in the original movie, the other one played her in a TV show. Third one, I don't even know. And they all arrive at the stately home of the author who originally wrote this character. I'm pretty sure they have to solve a mystery. I don't know if there's a actual death or just a mystery, but it sounds fascinating, and I like that it's the three Dahlias because it's three people who play Dahlia. I don't know, it sounds very fun. Next I have The Second Stranger by Martin Griffin. So there's this woman working in a remote hotel in the Scottish Highlands. There's a storm and a man comes in. He's injured. He says that his name is Don Gaines. He's a police officer. He's been in an accident, and the only other survivor was the prisoner his team was transporting. And then a second man arrives. He's also injured, and he basically tells the same story. He's a police officer. He was in an accident, and the only other survivor was the prisoner. So she's now stuck with these two men. One of them is this prisoner. I don't know if he's a murderer or whatnot, and the other one is a police officer, and which is which? I think this is a fun thriller. Next I have Stone Cold Fox, and the cover is beautiful, though I would say a little unusual for the genre. And I remember reading the synopsis. It has like a complicated story, but basically it's a woman who has been a con woman her whole life with her mom, and she decides that after a lifetime of conning people, she wants to get out of that life. And to do that, she wants to settle down with a man. So this is like her last con that she wants to do to get out of that life. I'm guessing not everything is going to plan, so she's trying to race against the clock to pass the finish line before everything is exposed. But like a lifetime of forced instruction in the art of swindling men by her mother, it sounds very interesting. Next I have Donato Carrisi, La Casa Senza Ricordi. I can't find here like the official translation into English. It has been translated into English, I am sure of it. I would translate it as House Without Memories. Earlier this year, or was it late last year? I don't even remember. I read The House of the Voices. Again, not sure if that's the actual translation, but that's what it means, by Donato Carrisi, which is the first book in the series that follow the main character Pietro Gerber, who is a psychologist. It's like a mystery crime. It's very twisty, it's very complex, but like easy to read. You never know what's happening, and I really liked the book, and this is the second book in that series. The second book did not get great ratings or reviews. The third one did much better, but I feel like I should read the second before I get to the third. And I don't know what that is about, and that's fine. My battery is flashing, no. So after reading Donato Carrisi, which was like the first contemporary Italian author that I read in a very long time, and I really enjoyed it, and I like the genre, I've decided to look for other Italian crime, thriller, mystery authors, and I've added this book to my TBR, Flowers Over the Inferno by Ilaria Tuti. It's set in the Italian Alps, and it follows an instinct-driven detective who won't let her aging body and mind prevent her from tracking a brutal killer. It sounds interesting, and I think there is a TV show or a movie. I think it's a TV show based on this. I might be completely wrong. Next, we're moving from Italy to Japan to A Death in Tokyo by Kigo Higashino. I read from Kigo Higashino before, though not a mystery, and I understand this is his like main genre, the genre he's most known for. And this particular book is the third and penultimate novel in the detective series. I kind of don't care that it's the third in a series. Obviously this is a detective series, so there is a very big chance that these books can be read separately. At least that's what I'm really hoping. And yeah, I don't remember the synopsis. Next is a book that actually has not been translated into English, so sorry about that. Austerlin Murders. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that correctly. Swedish book set in Sweden, and this is the first one in the series, and it's called A House to Die For. I saw it in a bookstore here in Moscow. It has been translated into Russian. On the website of the publisher, it calls it a cozy crime, and it says that the film rights have been sold, so that's exciting. The battery did die. Now it's 2 hours later and we're back. Let's move on. Next book is Suicide Thursday by Will Carver. This is like a thriller mystery that deals with mental health. The main character is a writer who can't seem to write past the first chapter. His best friend kills himself, and Eli, during his sessions with a therapist, they sort of discovered that his recent first chapters that he's been writing are not as fictitious as he thought, and it may be connected to his friend's death. It all sounds very vague, but I remember when I looked at this book on Goodreads, the thing that sold me was the reviews. There's one review by Liz Barnsley that said, another Will Carver instant classic that takes the realities of human experience and using those creates a thought-provoking, incredibly brilliant, and intensely addictive twisty tale. The man is a genius. I don't need to say more. Read them and sometimes literally weep. I'm intrigued. Now we're in historical mystery with the book Courting Dragons by Jerry Westerson, start of a new series that follows Will Summers, who was actually a real person, the jester to King Henry VIII. There is a murder and Will is investigating and trying to solve it. It does say, and afterward explains about the life of the real Will Summers, who serves the Tudor monarchs his entire life. Next is The Invited by Jennifer McMahon. This is a chilling ghost story. And this one is fun because it's a couple, a husband and wife, who sort of build a haunted house. They move to a rural area and find out that the property that they bought has like a dark and violent past, and Helen, who is the wife, she's a former history teacher, and she becomes consumed with the local legend of Hattie Breckenridge, a woman who lived and died there a century ago. I'm pretty sure like she finds like historical artifacts connected to mysterious deaths, and she incorporates them in the house, in the structure of the house that she and her husband are building for themselves. Objects that draw her deeper into the story of Hattie and her descendants. And as the building project progresses, the house will become a place of menace and unfinished business. A new home, now haunted, that beckons its owners and their neighbors towards an unimaginable danger. Next is another book that I heard of from Leanne from Literally Diversions. It's The Cloisters by Katie Hayes. I put this in the mystery thriller genre just because I'm not sure if it's paranormal, is there any fantasy or not. From what I understand, it's about a woman who dreams of working at the Metropolitan Museum of Art in New York. And instead of the one on Upper East Side, she is assigned to the Cloisters, also part of the Met, but it's the Gothic museum that has a lot of medieval art. It kind of looks like a medieval castle. It has a beautiful garden, like it's great. It's a little more remote. It has that kind of Gothic vibe. It's a little creepy. And there she discovers a hidden 15th century deck of tarot cards that might hold the key to predicting the future. And then there's a dangerous game of power, seduction, and ambition as the Cloisters turns deadly. The fact that it's a museum, the fact that it has tarot cards, the fact that it has to do with like medieval Gothic, again, castle-like place is very exciting to me. And Leanne is also very excited about this book, and I'm pretty sure she's planning to read it soon, so I can't wait to hear her review and see if I still want to read it. Then there's episode 13, and this is pretty much just horror. I'm pretty sure this has mixed media in it. There are tapes and journals, correspondence, and this does follow the like hit ghost hunting reality TV show, where each episode they go to a different location and explore it. And this is the 13th episode of that show, episode 13, and they go to the Paranormal Research Foundation. It's a derelict mansion that holds secrets and clues about bizarre experiments that took place there in the 70s. It says it's for fans of paranormal documentaries, ghost hunting shows, and found footage horror. Not a big fan of found footage horror because I don't know what that is, but paranormal documentaries, I do enjoy those. Next is The Silk House by Kate Nunn, which is a historical fiction, mystery, and like fantasy thriller that deals with witches. It says that it's inspired by the author's background. From the synopsis, it follows 3 women. First, there's an Australian history teacher who arrives at an exclusive boarding school in the British countryside. There are some mystery connected to this boarding school. Then there's the late 1700s, where Rowan leaves her village to work in the home of an English silk merchant. Third one is in London. Mary Louise Stevenson lives amidst the clatter of the weaving trade and dreams of becoming a silk designer. The synopsis really doesn't give much in terms of plot, but it sounds like a fun historical fiction where you learn about like the silk trade from the 1700s, but also with an added mysterious and fantastical element. And the very last book of this video is Hydro, a Victorian psychological thriller by G.H. Lusby. There is nothing on Goodreads. There is no description of it. There are some star ratings that people have given, but absolutely 0 reviews. This is set at the end of the 19th century. We follow John Edgeland, who is fleeing to an isolated hydropathic hotel in the wilds of Yorkshire, where he begins to sleepwalk, unable to trust himself or the bizarre water treatments. And who is the mysterious mutilated girl he rescues from a moor fire and brings back to the hotel to be cared for, and how is she linked to the sinister cult-like mill town of Blackmore? Sounds very, you know, creepy and mysterious and weird. The reviews do say that it keeps you guessing and turning pages from start to finish. Stunning debut, madness intrigue set in Victorian London and the wilds of Yorkshire. Compelling tale of horror, mystery, guilt, and how the demands of industry and commerce can be defeated by gentleness and love. So these are all the books that I've added to my want to read on Goodreads. Let me know if you already read any of these books, and should I keep them on my want to read? Would you recommend I actually read them? Thank you so much for watching this video, and I will see you in my next one. Bye!